Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of the PCM Hockey Podcast, as today is episode 2. But today we're going to be missing out on the C, as Kelvin will not be here today, as I'm only joined by my old buddy Mark Jones. How's it going there, laddie?
Very well, sir, and hopefully you're doing well in Calgary and enjoying the, I guess it's your second September in Calgary, second go around.
Yeah, my second go around, second year here. It'll be my first. It'll be like my second go around. Yeah, my first year, first official year living in Calgary, just a while ago.
Yeah, one full year. Yeah. Does it feel like? Well, I guess you were there for most of the summer, except you came back for a little bit to your hometown, your hometown you had for so many years, and but Calgary, I'd love to get up there at some point if there's less. Or down there, I should say. Pardon me. When I was in Vancouver, I guess it was kind of up. I don't know from Vancouver.
Yeah, it's a little bit up. It's higher up than Vancouver is.
Yeah, but I'd love to get down there. It's just obviously a lot of guardedness, people traveling around unnecessarily, so I'm trying not to. But I have good reason to come down there, and I may just do that at some point. If I get some decent tires on my car, I'll do the drive. So
yeah, come down. For sure. We'll record a live podcast together and stuff like that. That'll be fun.
Excellent. Maybe we could even secure a couple of Flames that are in town or something for those Flames fans.
Get some Goudreau or whatever. Who knows?
Monahan, whoever. Yeah.
Anyways,
I know we have some Calgary fans here in Chetwynd. So yeah. Anyways, let's get this going. What do you want to talk about this here on this go around?
Well, there was lots to talk about. Of course, with the Vancouver Canucks, we had the Matt Dumba rumor going to Vancouver, which I was surprised. I was actually going to tweet it at you, but then I totally forgot to. But did you hear about that rumor about Dumba going to Vancouver?
I heard that he might be moving, but I did not hear anything about him coming to Vancouver. I guess, I've tried to keep in the loop, but I did not hear that one. No.
I think the only reason why the rumor came up is because of the fact that Brock Besser is a Minnesota boy. So I think that's the only reason why that rumor came up, because it was like a 1-for-1 Besser Matt Dumba, but I don't think that would go very well for Vancouver. But it's weird because the Minnesota Wild, they're locking up on a lot of defensemen. Like, they're paying Spurgeon $7.5 million. They're paying Suter $7.5 million. They're paying Matt Dumba $6 million, and then Jonas Brody next year will be kicking into his new contract with $6 million. So lots of big contracts there, and all of them are locked in no movement clauses, so they can't trade away Brodin, Suter, and Jared Spurgeon. So the only guy that they could get rid of is Matt Dumba. So they're in some weird cap hell there in Minnesota. Really weird.
Well, you might be right onto something. Besser, I think there was some hate on, and I think this is, to use a Brian Burke phrase many years ago, Vancouver was called a goalie graveyard. I think it's because they would chase goalies out of town, the fans and the fair weather fans. I don't know why there was hate on for Besser. In terms of people saying, well, let's move them. Thank goodness some of the people that say this stuff are not the GM, because,
thank goodness.
Just like I think Benning gets a lot of bad rap. Like, he's done a lot of credit. There were haters for Burke. There were haters for Nonis. There were haters for, you name it. And I just think, Besser is a good piece. I love the way they called that, whoever came up with that term, lotto line for 6, 40, and 9. It's a Canadian joke that probably a lot of Americans wouldn't maybe get. But the fact of the matter is, for the Canadian lotto 649, I just don't, the Dumba thing could be, I'm not an expert on him, but it could have some, as they say, where there's smoke, there's fire. The interesting thing with Minnesota is I see they just moved, I forget who came the other way. They moved
Eric Stahl for Marcus Johansson. Yeah, and the thing that I find interesting is because Minnesota, I think this is the second go around for a year. I think he came in last year, Bill Guerin, if I remember correctly, as GM. This is his kind of first official offseason, I think it is, for Bill Guerin.
Yeah, I think first full one or whatever he came in, and he changed coaches. I was a little bit worried as a Vancouver fan that Evason was going to find a way. Sometimes it takes it takes not just the talent but the coach too can work miracles. And I thought Evason was going to find a way to beat Vancouver after we went down 1-0 in the series, and then finally Vancouver got going. I think Evason's a good coach. He's got, the credibility as a former NHL player. And I just think that he was at one point a Vancouver Giant coach who, again, I think we were talking off air about coaches that don't seem to be given a good chance a lot of the time in different levels. And in my opinion, Evason maybe got a raw deal in Vancouver.
Well, because usually they like circle jerk between Babcock, Laviolette, and Bruce Boudreau. They'd like to circle jerk between all those coaches, and they usually don't give tries to the other coaches. And I mean, the same thing with the Oilers signing Dave Tippett. I mean, it's the same go around. If you're a really good, credible coach, you're gonna get hired right off the get go. Like Bonus and stuff like that. They're getting. I mean, Bonus has been around for a long time, which is what we were talking about off camera, and we were talking about how like Jim Bonus has really taken this Dallas team and has really made it into a forcible force in the playoffs. And I mean, talking about the Stanley Cup Finals, which we'll get into later on, the Dallas team is a scary team. But anyways, Brock Besser had a great playoffs. I don't know what people are complaining about. It's his first ever playoffs. He's 23 years old. He's going to get better. Mm-hmm. I mean, in 17 games, he had 11 points. That's pretty fucking good. That's pretty good for your first playoff go-around. And Brock Besser is a guy that could score you 40 goals one or two seasons. Trade him for Matt Dumpa, and Vancouver they're gonna have a pretty busy offseason, especially since they got so many horrible contracts, and they need better defensemen. That's the biggest thing. Of course, they got to get Tanev back, and you know that they're definitely going to be signing Tanev back in lineup, but you definitely need to get that defense core a bit better, and you need to get that top six a bit better, right? You have it Brandon Suter, and Roussel is a great guy, but you have him signed at $3 million. You have him, Jay Beagle, signed at $3 million. You're still paying that Seb Barchi guy $3.3 million. It's just a ton of bad contracts there in Vancouver. And I mean, that's just the same with Edmonton too. We're stuck with a pretty good amount of bad contracts. Anyways.
Yeah, just you might have to edit this one. I think you called Jim Bowness. You might have to edit this. It's
Rick,
it's
fine. Did I call him Jim Bowness? Oh, Rick Bowness.
I'm pretty sure you did. But you can edit that. You can say it a couple times.
It could stay in. Yeah. People will correct
Nobody will notice it maybe. But I just thought I'd point that out because we're recording it. That's the benefit of it. But to go back to with Vancouver, we'll pick it up here. 3, 2, 1. Vancouver. It's going to be interesting. Like I watched the series as much as I could amongst my other regular paid duties on PCFM, PCFM.ca, and on the Radio Player Canada app, by the way. And the fact of the matter is, this is a blatant plug. The fact of the matter is I think Vancouver just ran out of gas, and I know I think since our last podcast, I don't think the series had wrapped up. Vegas, I'm sorry to say, I'm not sad that they're out. I really am not sad. And I mean, I know there's Derek Eglund here, who I don't know why he didn't play in the series. I don't know where you might know more about the player. I know as you head in from Dawson Creek into Prince George or Tumbler Ridge, Dawson Creek into Chetwynd, there's that big sign that mentions the two NHLers that have had roots here, Dodie Wood and Derek Eglund. I'm not sure if I'm saying the name right.
Yeah, Dodie.
But the point is, I don't know. Vancouver is going to have to get creative, and I have confidence they may not be able to keep everybody. They may not be able to keep Markstrom. I'm confident in Demko, and I think that it's nothing against Markstrom, but if he wants too much and he wants like a no trade clause, I know there's subtle differences, no trade, no movement. They've got to set themselves up because we're one fall away from Seattle entering the league now. And now with this weird schedule because of COVID, I guess the season now is scheduled, if everything continues along, however they're going to do this with no fans again, they're going to conclude this bubble Stanley Cup playoffs. Then we go into free agency, and I guess they're aiming for December, January for the what would be really the 2021 season instead of 2021. And then we're next fall, a year from now, everything goes according to plan. Seattle is taking the season as their inaugural season in the NHL. I mean, it's coming up. So the Canucks and all these teams are going to have to say, who do we leave exposed? Who do we not want to lose? How do we manage it's very tricky. And this has been the situation. Anytime there's an expansion team, you've got to manage your roster. So.
Yeah, and that's the big thing with Vancouver. And I mean, the no trade clause, that's fine because I think with the rules, no trade clauses don't get matched up when the expansion draft comes around. But if it's a no movement clause, then you're basically screwed. Like Vancouver already has, I know Louis Eriksson, I think, just has a no trade clause. Yeah, so you're good on Louis. You could expose him. But players like Michael Fearline has to be automatically protected. And there's a free agent, so you don't have to worry about him. But you only really have to worry about Fearland. And if you were to sign Markstrom and have him stuck on a no movement clause, you could potentially lose Thatcher Demko next year, which you really don't want to lose. So it's definitely a big decision on what Benny wants to do and stuff like that, and the big minds there. But it's going to be tough. I mean, it's going to be tough for every team with dealing with this salary cap era that we're going to be this flat cap that everyone's calling it. It's going to be a difficult offseason, really is. But changing the tides towards this offseason into the playoffs, as last episode we left off with, of course, Vegas beating not Vegas, Dallas beating Vegas, and then we were watching Game 5 between Tampa Bay and the New York Islanders, where New York won in overtime, but officially the Tampa Bay Lightning with Anthony Cirelli scored the overtime winning goal against the New York Islanders in Game 6, putting the Islanders to rest, which I gotta say, I'm giving high praise to Barry Trotz. What a playoffs for that Islanders team. I mean, I was impressed with the way they played. I think I guessed they were actually going to be making it onto the conference finals as well, but did you expect this team to play this well in the playoffs this year?
I think the Islanders, it's always a wild card because I'm trying to recall how far they went. Was this Trott's second year there? I think it was. And I don't know. I can't recall how it went last year. Nothing really surprised me. And it sounds like I'm in political terms, although this is a hockey podcast, they call it sitting on the fence, where someone says, well, I see the good in this and the good in that, and they don't want to make a decision. I thought maybe Islanders would pull out. I don't remember what I said in the last podcast. Nothing would have surprised me because I think the Islanders, in terms of their management group that's there now for so many years, it's almost ironic. Charles Wang, the late Charles Wang, who, I think he was part of some of the decisions that were made that were questionable, like DiPietro, who's still getting paid there apparently as a goalie and stuff. He passes away, and I learned to have some respect because I think he tried to be an innovator. But now they've got management there that have what they call speaker credibility. Lamoriello, a cup winner. Trotz, albeit once, but it's more than a lot of other people, a cup winner, and longevity in Nashville, Washington. So nothing would have surprised me, but I think the core group, like Barzal and all these other guys, they don't have a lot of the NHL playoff experience. So they're another team that will be a force to reckon with, just like Vancouver, had they done it. I mean, you think about it. Vancouver was, 5 wins away from the Stanley Cup final, right? Game 7 and then 4 more. Would they have taken out Dallas? I don't know. But to bring it back to the Islanders, a tough one. It probably would have been, and I would have been tough. As much as I always say, okay, what do I want and what do I think? I probably think Vancouver could have made it to the third round, but they would have fallen to Dallas maybe in 6 games. It's a moot point. They've learned a lot. Islanders have learned a lot, and I'm sure it hurts because had they won that game that they lost that pushed the Lightning, it would have been a Game 7, and then it's up for grabs because at that point, just like Vancouver, they were down 3-1. You get it to a Game 7, it's 1 game to take it all, and it means nothing really often once you've let a series slip away or you've battled back in. It could go either way. The Islanders, I think, have learned a lot. Tampa, I had completely forgotten about that they got to the final in 2015. And, I think that there's still probably some players there. I think few were interviewed after the, on CBC, credit to CBC and Sportsnet, and the saying, you get this second chance because it's always interesting to think about. They often say, bit of a tangent, when Jersey won their first cup in 95, yes, I can remember that, they always play a song. At least when CBC had the pure rights to it, they'd always play a song as they wrapped it up. And there was some song, I don't know the name of it, but it was something like, the lyrics were, you got to grab the chance because the chance may never come again. Yeah. And now I'm going to have to make a note to try to search what that song is with the wonderful internet. But the point is this: you don't get a chance always to go back to it. You played hockey. I never got to play minor hockey. I've played and been involved in other ways in hockey. And it doesn't matter what level you're at. If you have to go through and be one of 16 teams and then battle down to get to a championship and then win a championship, it's very hard. And look at the parity. Pittsburgh did it in Detroit. I think got to 2 finals back to back, but they only won once. Pittsburgh's won twice in the last 5 years back to back. It's very hard to get back. And I think Tampa has done that because they've kept a lot of their core. I think they've had a goaltending revolving door, but they've kept a lot of their core there. And the coach, they managed to keep the coach. And I think Cooper has bought himself some time, because I don't think, even if they lose this series, I wouldn't think that you're going to fire a coach. Although Philly has a habit of doing that. They would fire a coach.
I wouldn't. I mean, John Cooper, he's had some good relationships with Stamkos and Hedman and everyone like that. I don't think he would ever be really moved very quick. But if they were, like, for example, next year to lose in the second round or whatever, I'm pretty sure he would be fired. But I think this is a do or die for the Tampa Bay Lightning right now. This is like, you've been here. The Tampa Bay Lightning has been the most talked team for the past decade, but have not done a single thing. They have never really once won the cup. They've been close, but then they just choke. They lose. And everyone's been so used to seeing that. I feel like the Dallas Stars, though, are just something else this year. It's like the St. Louis Blues all over again. And we're seeing the team... a little bit,
maybe without the surprise, just to interject, without the surprise that the Blues went from what, like worst in January to cup winners in June.
That was something else.
That was unreal. And the irony, the tie-in with Tampa, look at that. Another Shen could win a cup after his brother won last year if they do manage to win. So, I think Dallas, I have a feeling they're going to do this. And this isn't because I kind of want them to. I mean, I've never been a huge Dallas fan when they're playing Vancouver. I mean, Vancouver is first for me. But I will say that I would be happy for Dallas to do it, and I believe they can do it because they've got that mix. I'm not an expert on their roster, but Tyler Seguin, he's matured, and he's been, for lack of a better term, a stud out there in terms of at times even doing some subtle things. The goaltending is great. Plus, you can't discount, they're not on the ice, but Jim Nill, a former NHLer, is the GM there. Rick Bowness, the proven, journeyman assistant coach who's been ironically, they say it's the first time that a former assistant, I guess after one season or whatever, after he took on for Jim Montgomery, Bowness was Cooper's assistant in Tampa for a number of years. So they've got the two that work together now against each other. I just think there's a lot of good parts to this that I feel Dallas, with that experience, and Bowness has been around the NHL and been to the Cup final. I guess the last time was, maybe Tampa, and then prior to that in 2011 with Vancouver under Vigneault. I think there's a lot of those tangibles where you say, okay, it's our turn now. It's my turn to win this. And he'll always say it's about the players, but you can bet he will. You saw his emotion at times probably. They want to win. Both these teams want to win. And, I mean, we can always break down a little bit what happened in game. I didn't get to watch a lot of it, but game one with Dallas becoming the victors.
Yeah, with, Dallas and their defense, I can't remember what the stat was, but it's like, I think Dallas's defensive core has scored the most goals defensively than any other team in Stanley Cup history. I can't remember. Don't word me on it. But with the way that their defense, I mean, Seguin has not been playing as great as he should be. Only 8 points in 21 games in the playoffs compared to what Jamie Benn, what he's been doing with 22 in 22 games. He's had 18 points. But Haskinainen has been a stud. 23 points. In 22 games, he's just been. I mean, the defensemen have really been the killers this playoffs. I mean, you look at Victor Hedman. I think it's like 8 goals, and it hasn't really been done since like Paul Coffey and who was the other guy that they talked about? Brian Leetch, Paul Coffey scored like 12 goals when the Oilers were making their runs, and that's just surprising. Like defensemen nowadays, like they're more passers than anything, but we're seeing them jump up in that offense. Like Jamie Alexiak, he's had 5 goals and he's 6'9" or 6'8", I think he is. He's a massive defenseman, but he's jumping up in the play, and that's been the biggest thing for the Dallas Stars is their offense. Their defensive offense, surprisingly enough, and you've seen that in the game against the Tampa Bay Lightning, where they had Joe Hanley, a guy who's been in the AHL for years, and now he's making his debuted in the NHL and he scores his first ever NHL goal in the playoffs, which is just amazing for that young guy there. And then it was a good game, I guess, for the Dallas Stars, but I really did feel like the Tampa Bay Lightning were going to make a comeback. What were the shots totals for the third period? I cannot remember, but it was a demolition derby between the two teams in the third period where the Tampa Bay Lightning, I think, had like 22 shots or something like that. Yeah. So Tampa Bay Lightning had 22 shots to 2 shots for Dallas. It was nuts, and people were like saying that Tampa Bay was dominating, but Anton Khudobin just shut the door. This Anton is crazy. It's like I'm feeling like whenever they show like a comparison between Tuukka Rask and Anton, or not Tuukka Rask, I mean Timmy Thomas. We all know Tim Thomas, that playoff run that he went on with Boston there, and how Tim Thomas, he's a small goalie, but he moves around. He's very unorthodox goalie, and that's how Anton plays, and I love it. Even though I'm not a big fan of Dallas, Anton has just been an absolute stud for the Dallas Stars, and he's continuing it against one of the best offenses in the NHL in the Tampa Bay Lightning. Oh.
No, I think you're very right, and the fact of the matter is I think you've got a number of good things. If the shot differential is going to be huge like that, and you can connect. I mean, I was impressed to see Dallas win by such a. I mean, it's not a blowout, but 4-1. I mean, it's a little bit lopsided, and now they've got that edge because I don't know. I think is it how did they work it? It's all in the bubble, but has Dallas got the home ice, or does Tampa have the edge in this series? I don't know how they're doing it.
I think it's Tampa Bay because they had more. I can't remember. I think Tampa Bay has home ice advantage though.
I can try to look here.
Yeah, Tampa Bay had. Yeah, Tampa Bay had the home ice advantage.
So they've basically stolen for whatever it's worth in this COVID bubble series, the last change, whatever. They've stolen the home ice advantage Dallas has. Then they've stolen back the home ice advantage right now. So credit to them. And I mean, it's like I say, I don't know off the top of my head if there's much of a BC connection other than Tom Ghilardi, who's the owner of the Sandman hotel chain. There's a free plug for them. Mr. Ghilardi, you can send us some free room nights or something. So the fact is, it just would be nice. Ghilardi was rumored at one point. I think he was going to be a part of the ownership group in Vancouver. And then there was some stuff went on there. I think before Aquilini bought it, if you might remember that up or somewhere in history. But he bought the Stars, and they've had some lean years. And, I'm sure he would be glad to be able to. They would all be glad if you get a chance to win the Stanley Cup. It's just amazing. Girls and boys, every girls and boys dream, I'm sure, throughout North America and anywhere that you follow hockey. So,
yeah, and also this game had 106 hits from Tampa Bay had 56 and the Stars had 50. And I was watching some of the highlights, and Tampa Bay is going really, really hard on John Klingberg. But I also seen with this many hits, Tampa Bay, their frustration of not being able to score a goal set them off. Patrick Maroon shot a puck at Kurianta, whatever the hell the kid's name is, shot a puck at Kurianta in the bench and just nicked him in the face. He got kicked out of the game and got a 10-minute misconduct. And I feel like it's going to really... the tempers are flaring in that game for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and I felt like I don't think they expected the way that Dallas was going to play. Because Dallas is a very chippy team with Corey Perry and Jamie Benn. They're very physical. They're there to piss you off. This team kind of reminds me of like an Anaheim Ducks sort of team. Where they have that veteran leadership. They have a lot of guys that will piss you off, and there's a lot of guys in there that could score goals. And that's the thing that's why I don't like Dallas very much. And I'm really hoping that Tampa Bay puts this forward and win this because that's my prediction. I'm hoping Tampa Bay wins. Anyways, let's kind of towards some rumors for the NHL. We're gonna get into some talk about the Canucks, Oilers, and the Flames. Now, Calvin is not here, but we'll start it off with the Calgary Flames. We'll start alphabetical order. We'll start it off with the Flames. So Calvin gave us some kind of notes to kind of talk about, and he was talking about Darcy Kemper going to the Calgary Flames, which Darcy Kemper is also rumored to be going to the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah.
And a couple other teams Kemper's been rumored to go since the falling of the Arizona Coyotes. And it's been unfortunate for the Arizona Coyotes, huh? Have you heard everything about that that team and what's going on there?
I just know I think they finally named a GM after their GM stepped down. I want to say it's an Armstrong. I didn't realize there were two Armstrongs in St. Louis.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
Yeah, I didn't follow directly a lot. Other than, I guess they got Taylor Hall, whenever that was, a few years back, and now some rumors that he, may or may not stay. So you fill me in, and we'll run with that.
All right, so Taylor Hall was picked up at midway throughout the start of the year from New Jersey for a first overall selection. So Arizona does not have a first-round pick coming towards 2020. But they also lost their 2021 first-round pick and their second-round pick because they decided to do some private combine things at the draft.
That's right.
And they did a bunch of illegal things, so they lost the first-round pick. Now they're deciding they also didn't pay some of their players' bonuses, which was due on in June, which was a fucking long time ago now. So now they're worrying about having to sell the team once again. Not just that, they're going to be selling a lot of their players because of the fact that they're dealing with so bad with their salary cap issues, especially since COVID hit. So Darcy Kemper's been our biggest rumor, and Darcy Kemper was the guy that was terrific against the Colorado Avalanche. He was stellar, and he had this year he had a 222 goals against average and a 928 save percentage in 29 games. In the playoffs, he wasn't too bad either, but he had a 347 goals against and a 0.913 save percentage, but that was because of the fact that they were facing Colorado, of course. Now, I think Darcy Kemper would be a perfect fit for both the Flames and the Oilers because, not so much the Oilers. I'm happy with Mikko Koskinen. I'm fine with going with Mikko and signing some other 1B goalie because, I think that's what the Vancouver Canucks should do as well. You get Markstrom and Demko. You have two great goalies that can play. I think that's the way that I think the NHL has been going towards lately. And you're seeing it definitely in this playoffs, except for Tampa Bay going with Vasilevsky the entire playoffs. But you've been seeing it with a lot of teams where they need two goalies to go far. Because if you lose one of your goalies, you're screwed. Who do you go with? Colorado had that same problem where they lost Grubauer, and then they went with Frank Kuhns, but then Frank Kuhns wasn't doing so good, so they went with Hutchinson, and Hutchinson didn't do much better because, he's not so great. But where do you think Darcy Kemper is going to be going as a goalie? Do you think he's going to go with the Flames, or who else do you think is going to be in that conversation?
Just to touch on, first of all, you mentioned Colorado. Funny, I saw some hating, as a lot of people will say on Dallas when they're saying, oh, well, you almost lost to a third-string goaltender. It took Game 7. Well, Dallas got it done. So speaking of that, Colorado almost pulled it out. Good on them for having some depth. And, that said, with as far as Kemper, Calgary, rather, seems like they've had some challenges in goal. They flipped goalies with they got, now I'm trying to remember, is it this year they have Mike Smith?
No,
they had Talbot.
Oilers had Mike Smith. The Flames had Talbot and Riddick.
Yeah, and so I don't know. It sounds like there needs to be, and I think Brian Burke still holds that close to the heart because he was the president of hockey there and built a lot of what was there in terms of the current GM, Treleving and things. I think they are going to find a way to get somehow an upgrade in goaltender. And that's not a slight on Riddick or Talbot necessarily, but obviously, I guess whatever happened, the meltdown in that Calgary series, they've given their coach the blessing because they don't want to have a revolving the door there. They've kept giving Jeff Ward the blessing and see what he can do. Mm-hmm. I think they're going to they could go after if Kemper's going to be available. They're going to go after somebody. And, it's
they need to.
They can't. They need to. And I don't think to go after somebody that, that's sort of past their prime. Like, for example, I'm not saying he's not good, but to bring it back, sounds like I'm trying to desperately bring it to Vancouver, but I'm just using this comes to mind. Markstrom is kind of on the sort of the if you think of it past 12 o'clock in terms of, he's on the downward spiral of his career because he's, I think he's 30. Is he 35 now? Wasn't he born or is he born in 90? He's
Markstrom?
30. Yeah, I think he's born in 90, so he's only 30.
I think, yeah,
But
he's
that
only like
starts-
30.
But that starts to get into the same realm of where Luongo was when he hit his peak in Vancouver in the Stanley Cup final. He was, I think, a 79, so he was 31 or somewhere around there, or 32. You're in that same realm, so I think they need to get someone. I don't know Kemper, all his age and stuff, but, you know, he would probably be a good asset because Calgary's going to have a new building coming online at some point too, and, you know, they've got it's not an automatic. I mean, they've had a pretty loyal following for a number of years now after some lean years. But I think they've got to do something because they've got to find a way to keep, they talk about Goudreau maybe not performing in the playoffs. I think you need, it starts from the back out, I think. And I think you can't do it with just a great goaltender, but you need a great goaltender, I think. And like you say, maybe you need a 1A and a 1B or a 1 and, a 1B to kind of have a decent backup, as we saw in Vancouver too with, look at people now. Demko's made a name for himself. They're saying it was the Demko treatment that got into Vegas's head. So back to Calgary, Kemper could be an addition, and I think it's a fair bet to see him land there if Phoenix is not going to re-sign him.
No, Kemper has already he has a contract extension that gives him a $4.5 million for 2 years.
It would be a trade. Pardon me. Okay, yeah. So they could. I don't know what Calgary's cap situation is. Move some players. That's the thing in the cap age.
They got $16 million. They got $16 million, and they only have to sign Mangiapane, Jankowski, and then a bunch of defensemen. But they're rumored not to be bringing back Hamonic or Gustafsson. TJ Brody might come back, but I think they're rumored to be going after Matt Dumpa as well, Calgary, which I think would be a smart idea, right? You build a core between Giordano, Hannafin, Anderson, you have Bulamaki, and then you build it with Matt Dumpa coming into the team. That's a pretty good damn defensive core. And David Riddick, I know Calvin will disagree with me on this one, but David Riddick is a shit goalie. And I'm going to come out and say that because I don't like David Riddick. I know people are like, oh, David Riddick's good. I'm like, no, he's not. Like, he had a 907 save percentage and a 297. He's a hot and cold goalie. I remember that time where he did that fucking stick flip where he threw it up in the air after that shootout against the Edmonton. After that game, he was shit. We fucking got in his head. And then I remember we beat the shit out of him in one game. I can't remember which game it was, but the Oilers, we stomped in the Flames and we kicked in Riddick.
I think you're right. It was almost like you've poked the bear, Riddick. Don't showboat, and that was showboating. And it's like, okay, lots of goalies celebrate, but I think the way he did it, I don't remember the whole context, but it was like almost like, okay, we're going to have that as bulletin board material, however you want to call it, because that's just There's celebrations and then there's over the top, and that was a little bit over the top, and I think it poked the bear in Edmonton, as it were.
But I would not mind, because David Riddick, if he has less games, he plays better, and that's just without a doubt. David Riddick is not your 50-game guy. He's your less than that. He's only going to be playing 30, 40 games a year. Darcy Kemper could put up some pretty good games. I mean, he's going to be a very good goaltender for the Calgary Flames if they're able to pick him up. But that's the thing, too. Do you really want to sacrifice your first-round draft pick on a goalie that might not perform for you? That's the problem with goalies, and you really don't know. You could put all your money, all your cards into one goalie, but it can never really work out for you. So that's going to be the big question. And for the Oilers, we're actually rumored to be in Kemper, but now Nicholson came out with a press conference, I think, today, and they said that the Oilers are not going to be doing any big moves. They're just going to be doing some tweaking, which honestly, I don't know, man. I really don't know if tweaking is going to fix the Oilers roster at where we are right now, because we're shit 5-on-5. Like, and you've seen it against the Chicago Blackhawks. We cannot play 5-on-5 hockey, and we need to get better at it. And for us, and all the rumors, of course, with Larson being moved and stuff like that, I would love to see it happen. I would love for us to pick up some top 6 talent and to go after Mike Hoffman, to go after the best free agent. But you know what? I'd rather go calm. I'd rather not go after and sign stupid people to stupid contracts. like what the Vancouver Canucks kind of put themselves into. I'd rather play it calm and just sit back and relax with the Oilers right now, because I think the best way that we need to do and handle McDavid right now is be slow, develop players like what we had in Yamamoto. Yamamoto has been a great emerging player into the Oilers roster. Mikko Koskinen was a great goalie for us last year. You pick up a 1B goalie and Aaron Dell, or maybe go after maybe someone a little bit more expensive. I think that's definitely, but I think what also was rumored is that we're going to be bringing back Mike Smith, which I don't know, man. I really don't want Mike Smith back on the team and him fucking throwing the puck and then turning it over, and it was just too many bad memories. But I don't know. It's gonna be a weird offseason for everyone, honestly, and that kind of goes the same with the Vancouver Canucks. Kind of seeing that Matt Dumpa was rumored to go there and stuff like that.
Yeah, you're right, and I think it's going to come down to a situation of, again, it comes back to the teams are all going to have to be smart. And I'm trying to recall, who is it that's the GM now in Edmonton? Is it
it's Ken
Bob
Holland.
Nicholson?
It's Ken Holland.
Oh, it's Holland. Right, that's right.
Bob Nicholson is our president.
That's right. Holland, I mean, is a proven guy. I think they've got to try to figure things out. I think they finally have broken this trend of, there's times where you can have the historical players in there, but Edmonton has had to shed the situation of, it's almost been like, for lack of a better term, an old boys club. Like, well, let's just reincarnate, another former Edmonton player. And sometimes that works, but sometimes, great players don't necessarily become great coaches. And everybody was afraid to, I think, move certain people out because everybody was a friend of a friend of a friend. And so I think they're trying to move in the right direction, and they're trying things. And I mean, Edmonton, refresh my memory, our listener or viewer will know the history. Edmonton got how far in these playoffs here? They won the play-in series, did they not?
No,
they made it to round one?
They lost in the play-in rounds to the Chicago Blackhawks. That's
right. So, I mean, I don't really I guess technically they were saying that that's kind of treated as playoffs. Whatever you want to call it. It was a best-of series, so it's kind of was playoff experience. Edmonton needs to get back into, sort of the final 16, and they're going to do what they need to be able to do that. And, Smith might have a role if it's cap space, because, again, you got all these players. Off the top of my head, I mean, you've got, who I was going to say Hall. Who's McDavid?
Yeah.
Sorry, I couldn't think you could edit that. McDavid has, been there, and they often talk about, he's been there, and, he hasn't seen any. I don't know. Was he there when they had that one series of playoff success? Or
when we went on to the second round and we lost the Anaheim Ducks in some unfortunate fashion. Yeah, McDavid was there, and this team is gonna. Go ahead. What was that?
I was just going to say, they need to build something to have. It's kind of like what Vancouver had, because, again, I have to draw that comparison. When Vancouver finally got Luongo, and I thought they should have found a way to get him years earlier, they finally gave something of a lift. And I hate to say it, we didn't have great goaltending that could get it done in the playoffs when we had Dan Cloutier and stuff. And I think it was just he had reached his kind of his top level. Luongo brought us to another level, and but then we couldn't get, you'd have to have that balance. But great goaltending will give you that edge, as Edmonton, and you might be too young to remember, when Edmonton made that run in 2006, I guess it would have been. That. Yeah, so they had, I'm trying to remember who they had there. I want to say was it Rolison they had?
Yeah, Dwayne Rolison.
They probably would have won the cup if Rolison hadn't gotten injured when he was crashed into. And that was one of the times I was cheering for Edmonton, because, again, and then they had to put in whoever their backup was, and it wasn't fair to him. I mean, to get thrown in. Who was it?
UC Markkanen.
Yeah, and I think he was an okay goalie, but it's not fair. It's not fair to throw him in. And it was almost like, and that was when who was that beat Edmonton that year? Was that
Carolina Hurricanes?
Carolina, yes, that's right. So the point is you need that great goaltending, and you need maybe a heir apparent, again, like Vancouver. That's where Vancouver is in a very good position, and they can't screw it up. And Edmonton, I think, is just a good goaltender, as you're more in tune with how it's gone for them with, like you say, Smith. You're not keen on that, but he might have a place at the right dollar amount, and depending on what they can do with that and his situation. And
he's not going to want very much money because he got like a $1 million bonus, so he's only going to be like at least $1 million for another year of a contract for Mike Smith. And I wouldn't mind going back to going with Mikko Koskinen and Mike Smith. Mike Smith is just too old, though. That's my problem. He's aging out. He's not as good as he used to be. I love Mike Smith as a goalie, but the biggest thing with our team is we're too much of a dick-sucking crew in Edmonton. Dave Tippett loves to suck.
I don't know if you're going to be able to leave that in there, but anyways.
I don't care. It's going to stay in because I hate it because it's like Ken Holland loves Detroit Red Wings players, so he brings in Andreas Anthony, which I loved. I loved Anthony, and I loved the players that he brought in and stuff like that. But Mike Smith and Dave Tippett, when we started him for Game 1 against the Chicago Blackhawks, I was thinking, what the heck are we doing? I'm like, Mikko Koskinen was the better goalie all year long, had better stats than Mike Smith, but yet we start Mike Smith in Game 1 against the Chicago Blackhawks in the play-in rounds. That was stupid. I think we go after someone new instead of Mike Smith. But if I know this team, we're going to be signing Mike Smith for a year, and we're going to be keeping him. But I don't think that's a smart idea. I know we're going to go with it, and it really worries me because I've been in this position before where we've had positive years, and then next thing you know it, it says trash fire, and then trash fire.
Oh, yeah.
And then we're back up and we're good, and then trash fire. It's been that same repetition, and it scares me, especially with everyone on Twitter. Like, all these people are like, oh, Ken Holland's ruining the team. He's signing all these players to bad contracts, and they're not going to be doing anything this offseason. It's so stupid. And it's going to really concern me this offseason with what Ken Holland does. And if he doesn't do anything, I'm scared what the media will say, because I know how Edmonton media works. If this team doesn't improve, or if the team looks the same, everyone's just going to start hating on Holland, and everyone's just going to call him to be fired and stuff like that.
I think Holland has got some, as they use the term sometimes, some rope in terms of some latitude. You know, they say you'll hang yourself or whatever. Mm-hmm. I think he's got some latitude, but he's got to, again, it's that it seems to be, and this goes on, I think, in whatever, you know, organization. If we're going to stick, you know, obviously we're talking hockey, but it could go across a lot of different things and sports and industries. People bring in people they know, and I think we talked on this before. Mm-hmm. Tippett seems to have that connection with Smith, so he rides the horse that he knows. But
same with
they've
Neil.
Got to sometimes. What's that?
Same with Neil as well.
Yeah,
James Neal.
Sorry,
James Neal, because Tippett and James Neal played together.
Yeah, they've got to, and sometimes that's a good thing, but sometimes you got to throw away that loyalty because, you know, it's like it's past its prime in terms of, okay, Smith may still be a very good goalie, you know, you can get him for $1 million, like you say, or something like that, and that's, you know, cheap. You know, it's still $1 million, but that's cheap comparative to what you're going to be paying, like a lot, you know, a really, really, really good, established, proven goalie that you want to tie your horse, your cart to, you know, tie the horse to the cart to. The point is, but Tippett is, I think he's had some success. I don't know how far he's gone. I think he got Phoenix to the Final Four there one year, and then that was it. I think they need to. He will be on a short leash. And they can't keep having revolving coaches, because how many coaches have they gone through in Edmonton? Like, name them off. Even me not being a loyal fan there. They've had
Todd Nelson, Tom Rennie.
They had Rennie. They even had Pat Quinn at one point for a short time, if you remember that.
Dallas Eakins here. I could tell you over the past decade since, 2009-10, we had Pat Quinn, Tom Rennie, Ralph Kruger, Dallas Eakins, Todd Nelson, Tom McClellan, Ken Hitchcock, and Dave Tippett, who's our current coach right now.
Had Hitchcock there, and then Hitchcock he decided to maybe step away, maybe because he saw the Gong Show, because I think that was before Holland was there. I can't remember the sequence, but the point is, you can't, like it happens, and you have to sometimes just sort of say this isn't working for whatever the reason, like your listener and viewer, our listener and viewer is going to get tired of me talking about Vancouver, but that's the team that I'm passionate on. I'm drawing the parallel. Well, no, but I'm drawing the parallel. Vancouver had Tortorella. whatever the reason was, they brought in Tortorella. I kind of thought, interesting, and that was whatever. Well, then when a bunch of stuff happened, and you could probably guess why he was let go after they fired Gillis. I mean, it's not the first time they fired a team manager. Pat Quinn was fired, and then they fired Tom Rennie here. Well, they fired Mike Gillis. Linden comes in and reevaluates and says, no, we're getting rid of the coach. And the previous time they brought in Keenan, well, this was like Keenan 2.0 that they were getting rid of, and they went with, nickname Whiteboard Willie. The point is, you sometimes have to get rid of a coach after one, maybe 2 seasons, and it does happen. But I don't know right now that Tippett is the issue yet. I think what they need to, but he does. Yeah, and I think he needs to rethink, just like Vigneault had to. He saved his job when he was in for 2 seasons under Dave Nonis, and then they had to go ahead and say he had to sell himself to Gillis, and he lasted like another, 5 years or something in Vancouver, and I think that was a good decision. He had to adapt, and maybe Tippett is going to have to adapt some of his philosophy, and that's where Holland will have to make the tough decision that, okay, well, you're not adapting, we're going to have to make a change, but I don't think Edmonton is there yet. I think it's about roster. Yeah. And Tippett may be changing a little bit of his, if he's being too loyal to some of these guys. Nope. This isn't an old boys club where you get to bring your friends from Phoenix and Dallas along. You've got to bring what's going to work. And it's you can't hitch your wagon to a guy that's maybe not your best option for goal and things like that. So that's a long way of answering. I think they can make it work, but they're going to have to make some tough decisions.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is people got to know that training is expensive. If you want to go after a player like Kemper or Hall or whoever, you have to pay a big price. And I think the way that Holland's really thinking is we need to build this team internally. We need to draft. We need to build this team because we have done the free agency thing where we go out and sign players like Lucic and Sekera, but they're now dead cap to us. They're useless to us. So why not build the team from internally? Like we have Bouchard, Broberg, so many other prospects that are looking really good right now, and that could be some huge guys for this upcoming season. I think we do need to do a bit of tinkering 5-on-5 wise. We need to really elevate our game 5-on-5. But I think Tippett, he's going to go home and he's going to really evaluate this team and what he needs to do to become a better coach for this team. Because that was the biggest thing. We've seen a lot of point production from some lines, but then other lines, it was just meh. Our depth, I always said that our depth was good, but looking at it and taking a step back after the year, we need some work down there. We need some better third line people. We need some better depth, some guys that could play some good defense, some guys that could play some 5-on-5. We need some working. But I'm done talking about the Oilers. Let's get on to talking about the Vancouver Canucks and their plans this offseason, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done there in Vancouver. Like a lot.
I think if we touch on a few things, I mean, the one player, if you asked me about, well, it's hard to say just one, but if you said you can only bring in one player that I guess out of the ones, Markstrom, Tanev, Toffoli, I think they said Tyler. I always get Levo and Mott confused, but it's Mott who was a beast in, and he came out, or that's a bad wording. He came along and admitted to him, now it's not the shame, and admitted to, on a personal note, I think he's an inspiration because he talked about how he's battled, I think, depression, if I stand to be corrected. And I think there was a feature on that. You can jump in, but, no, we're not that. But at the end of the day, who could you bring back? If you could only bring back, say, one of those guys, because I don't know exactly what they can move around. Toffoli, I was not a big fan of Toffoli, again, while back, because when they played LA, Vancouver played LA in, I guess, 2012, and I just remember he seemed really smug, and I just thought, but that's just because he's on the opposition team.
That was his rookie year.
and it's one of those things you love to hate. You hate them when they're on the other side, but you love to have them. I think he was an impact player. There was a funny story that they said maybe it was a strategy. He wasn't really injured, and they brought him in as sort of a surprise weapon when he came back. Well, I think he was injured. I don't know what's come out about now after the fact. But the point is, we gave up a fair amount Vancouver did to get him. I think you've got to do your utmost. He has said, and that's the beauty of, all this stuff being videoed and stuff. Mm-hmm. He has said, and people could spin it any way they want. Well, I want to stay there, but at the end of the day, let's just say he goes back and signs with LA or something like that. I think he does want to stay here. I think his wife, just the vibe I got, is really enjoyed and saw how much Vancouver was into it and saw the excitement of this young team. Mm-hmm. I think they've got to find a way to sign Toffoli. And then as far as what else they've got to do, like you said, the top six. I mean, your thoughts, on the top six. If you go through the top six, we know we've got Besser. Well, you go through it. Because I'm trying to picture all the guys. We know we've got Horvat. We know we've got Petey. We know we've got, Besser, I think, is here. But where do you think there needs to be improvement? Like you say, I love Gaudette, but Gaudette's, I think, a third liner or a fourth liner. You may have to give up something. I think Gaudette's got amazing energy, like something that Vancouver never gets in, those intangibles. But you may have to give up something, and some of these guys are signed. But who do you like? For example, Stetcher, local boy. He had waves of good things. He did some stuff in the playoffs, but you might have to. Mm-hmm. Ideally, it'd be great if you could get these guys signed to, with no restrictions, and you might have to then.
Well, they're young guys. They're RFAs anyway, so you won't have to give them anything. So you won't have to worry about those guys, which will be nice for you.
Unless you let them go. I think the RFAs, doesn't it? Sometimes they say they let them go to arbitration or whatever if they don't match or they don't.
Some players already have arbitration, so you just match the offer, then you go through arbitration and you have to fight with them about your salary and stuff like that. But yeah, your biggest RFAs right now is Virtanen, Gaudette, and Stetcher, who are pending RFAs. Virtanen and Stetcher have arbitration rights, so they're going to be taken probably to arbitration. One player I am not a big fan of, and I know Canucks fans are not a big fan of, is Virtanen. He's just been an underperforming player for you guys for the past couple of years, and I think that's a guy that you just let go. I don't think you bring him back. In the latest 31 Thoughts with Elliot Freeman, he said that the Canucks have a desire to retain all three of Markstrom, Tanev, and Toffoli. Freeman added that Vancouver has a number it won't go past, and that Markstrom has a strong market. So I think Markstrom's going to be the toughest one to get back on the team. Tanev's going to be the easiest, and Toffoli, we don't know. We don't know if he's going to want to come back to Vancouver or not. It's really tough to get it's really tough to get players to sign in Canada because of the taxes and all the deductibles and all the money that you lose and stuff like that. It's actually you get more money if you play down in like Dallas or Tampa Bay or any of the American teams. You make more money, and it sucks for us Canadian fans because we're seeing Toronto fucking have rumors to get Alex Pietrangelo. But I think for their squad, they need some top six help. Tanner Pearson was great, and he did do great up on that second line with Horvat and Toffoli. But I think you might need a little bit more of an improvement. Now, you could keep Tanner Pearson there because, you're still paying Tanner Pearson, what is it, like $3.75 million for the next year? So you could keep him up there. But the depth really needs some work, right? Like, you really, really need some work. Like, Sutter, I'm not a big fan of Sutter. Like, Beagle, I'm not a big fan of Beagle. I'm not, like, a huge fan, and especially at the money that they're getting paid this year. It's going to be really, really tough to move them, especially since they're stuck on no trade clauses and stuff like that. Defensively, definitely needs some work. Tyler Myers was decent this year. He's a really good defenseman for you guys. But I think you guys need another good defenseman. That's why Matt Dumpa would be a great defenseman for you guys. But supposedly Minnesota wants a center for him, which you guys don't want to give up Horvat or Pearson. Like, that's not happening for you guys. So it's definitely going to be a weird offseason for a lot of these teams, for, of course, the Canadian teams, especially for your guys' team, since you're kind of handicapped with the cap, especially since it's flat as well with $14.2 million. And we'll really have to see what happens. Really have to see what happens.
Sorry, we can redo that. Say that, and then I'll jump in. Yeah, sorry.
Well, no worries. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Really, I was just saying, you said we'll have to really see what happens. I was just going to jump in there. Sorry, with us not being in the same room, where the delay on the phone. What I was going to say is, and on Skype, what I was going to say is a couple things. I think it's a shame if you lose. Okay, Markstrom, because he's a UFA, if you lose him, and I don't know if there's anything owed to a team. I think in terms of draft picks, I can't remember if you get that sometimes if you lose.
Only with RFAs. Only with the RFAs. Only with RFAs.
So you lose Markstrom. I'm accepting that he might be gone and you get nothing for him. It's a little bit of a harder pill to swallow if you see someone like, well, I'm going to say especially Virtanen, gone and you don't get nothing for him. What I would love to be able to see get done somehow is if you had a trade, and this is the poker game, you have a trade lined up where you basically somehow, for example, you've got a Virtanen and you know that you can move him to whichever team, and that team has agreed, get him signed, or often they find a way to move the rights, and then he's now is Virtanen a UFA or an RFA?
RFA, he's an RFA.
So you move it, you get him signed, or you trade his rights, and then with an RFA, whatever comes with that, to a team, you want to have some sort of asset. And it may not be an asset that's going to come right back into the lineup right now, but that's part of the moving parts. It's like the train rolling down the tracks. What it shows you today, the boxcar you're staring at today, I use this analogy, you're looking through the viewfinder on your camera phone or whatever, you're looking at the picture, it moves along. And I think Virtanen, he does seem to be, after that game one, I went on the record. I don't think I deleted this tweet because, that's not how you do it. Unless you think, okay, I really shouldn't have, maybe it's a little bit whatever. I left the tweet up and I said he's something to the effect of he was a disappointment. I might have been a bit cruder. And Mark on the Air 88 if you want to search for it. I like Virtanen, but I felt, because the side note, you saw him out. I think there were some questionable things he was doing with the COVID times. He was out at one of the clubs, and I think he was maskless. And this was when it was like, well, why are you doing that? And why are you not self-isolating or staying, ready to get back when they hadn't got back to, training camp yet? There's some questionable things that he's done. And it's just kind of like, sometimes that's fine. He's still a younger guy, but you've got to show the maturity, like juxtaposition, taking the talent out of the picture. Look at a Horvat or look at a Pettersson, higher talent scale versus a Virtanen, but the maturity level. Okay, Horvat's a new father. He was in a tough situation having to be in the bubble without his new baby around and his wife and stuff. Pettersson, the maturity he shows now. And the point is you need a player to be mature, and I think that would be the anchor around Virtanen's neck right now is it's questionable maturity and leadership, and that might be why he's gone, but it would be a shame to see him gone for nothing. Stetcher, if he's gone or you lose him or whatever, RFA, however it's going to work, because I'm not an expert on all that, full disclosure, all the the ins and outs, these guys are going to want money, but it's going to come down to, I don't know. I'm concerned that Stetcher's going to think he's worth more than he is. And notwithstanding, he's had some horrible, the trifecta of guys having horrible family losses. Stetcher, Markstrom, and who's the other guy? He's on the tip of my tongue. The tough guy that was not in a lot of the playoffs. I want to say it's like Fitzgerald. It's not Fitzgerald. There's a guy now is on the
Tyler Mott?
No, there's another guy that was he was a fighter. Who's one of the fighters? I think he wears 72 or 71. He's like a tough guy on Vancouver's team. I want to say Buchanan.
Zach McEwen?
Yeah, I think him. He lost a dad too. So they kind of had to battle through a lot of tough stuff. And I would hate to see some of these guys like Tanev, he had a lot of heart. He battled through, and it's tough to see these guys lose. But like a friend of mine said, that's a loyal fan, ironically, in Calgary. He based in Calgary now. He said, you know what? You're going to have to just accept it. You're probably going to lose Markstrom. And again, I don't know what you can do. You've got to position yourself. All the moves they make for this season aren't just for this season. They're for the draft coming up. How do you insulate yourself so you still don't lose? Like, I think we were lucky out of the last go-around. I think Vancouver only lost Spiza, I think, to Vegas. Well, yeah. I wasn't a big Spiza fan. It's just like, but you're right, like on Sutter, okay, he showed a little bit of leadership, but I don't think he's worth – a lot of these deals that were made were, basically it was like Kessler for Bonino, which basically turned into Sutter. And then it's like I think there was maybe another player or so involved there.
Mm-hmm.
There were some things where they had to salvage what they could out of it. But some of these players, like you say, Roussel, I kind of like. He's a bit of an agitator. But, you have to make some tough decisions. I mean, Beagle, Stanley Cup experience. Pearson, Stanley Cup experience. Toffoli, you're going to have to make some tough decisions. And maybe Beagle's one that gets exposed to go to a new team such as Seattle. You know what I mean? And as far as the Vancouver and the Canadian dollar thing, I don't know that it's always an anchor. There's a lot of players that want to play in a passionate city, although there's no fans right now, like a Vancouver or Calgary or Edmonton or pretty much all the Canadian cities. I think right now you could say that. But there's a lot of players that don't care if they're in Canada. And even if they're Canadian, they just want to take their money and run. And I think a player like Toffoli, he's from Eastern Canada, Central, Ontario, but he seemed to legitimately like Vancouver. And I believe him. I believe Tanev, if they can find a way to make it happen. And Markstrom, too. He wants to stay here. But at the end of the day, they want value. The team wants value, and the players want value. And I think out of all those guys, if you said Tanev, Markstrom, Toffoli, I think Markstrom will be the one that does not sign here, in my opinion, because I don't think you're going to get the deal that makes sense for both sides. Both sides have to be happy with the deal, and I just don't think Markstrom's going to want – he's going to want to know – possibly a no trade with a limited number of teams, or possibly no movement. And that's been an anchor around a lot of teams, especially Vancouver. I think they said Gillis, one of his downfalls was he just gave them away like water. He gave away no trade or movement clauses, and we were anchored with a lot of that Benning was able to get them to waive those clauses later on so we could free up and get some of these guys out of here and start to move forward and refresh the team. So it's going to be an interesting one.
It really is. It is going to be an interesting offseason. And as we get close to the end of the podcast here, we got one last topic. And that's the Alex Pietrangelo rumors that have been swirling. Have you heard about Alex Pietrangelo?
I have heard you can probably enlighten me a little bit more on sorry, I'm multitasking here.
No
3,
worries.
2, 1. Here, getting the dogs dinner ready here. There, you can leave that in. Yes, Jasper says hello to all the listeners and viewers. The fact of the matter is, Pietrangelo, or Pietrangelo, I'm not sure the pronunciation. You can enlighten me. Rumors. I think you've given me more than I heard something in passing that maybe Toronto or whatever. You run with it, and I'll throw in my 2 cents.
So the rumors right now with Pietrangelo is that the St. Louis Blues gave him kind of like a low ball offer, in his opinion, to a $7.7 million deal for like 7 years or something like that. Now, there was a ton of rumors that he came out and said that he is going to test the free agent market. Now, people have been saying that maybe it's just a scare tactic to get the St. Louis Blues to pay a little bit more and stuff like that, but we really don't know. Of course, always the biggest rumor is, of course, Alex Pietrangelo going to Toronto, because it seems like Toronto, in their imagination, will pick up everyone. It's just how it is, right? Like, Steven Stamkos is in the free agency. Oh, well, he's going to Toronto. Yeah, like, they're going to really make it work with $6.1 million and, like, already spending money on Matthews, Tavares, and Marner. I don't know, man. I don't think Pietrangelo is going to go to Toronto, but it's rumored that the Leafs, Bruins, Avalanche, Flames, Oilers are all spots that could land Pietrangelo. I think the team that Pietrangelo will go to is the Colorado Avalanche. I think that's just the team that could afford him. Yeah. Avalanche have $20 million coming into this free agency, with only having to sign Nikushkin, Wilson, Jost, Burakovsky, Nemastankinov. Like, very small players that they got to pay. And they're going to have a ton of money afterwards. And I think Pietrangelo would be a perfect spot in Avalanche. But one last question for you. Where do you think Pietrangelo will go?
You will love this, because this is just kind of a gut feel from, not really being really passionately on this topic or having a lot of intel. I just feel, or gut feel, I have a gut feel that he's going to somehow, if they could make it work, he could be a good missing piece, as it were, I just feel, to an Edmonton. Now, that may be a wish. You would love that, being the loyal Oiler fan, but I just think, now, is Pietrangelo not the captain in St. Louis?
I think he is the captain in St.
Yeah,
Louis. I'll
I don't
double
think it's the other
check.
guy. Who's the other guy that's there that was in Colorado? The other
Yeah,
sort of big.
Pietrangelo is the captain there in St. Louis. Yeah.
Yeah. So if he can't be re-signed in St. Louis, which it may be, a chess game, and they get him re-signed, if he does land up somewhere else, I get a feeling he could go to an Edmonton if they can make it work. Again, I don't know their cap situation off the top of my head, but with the clout, the credibility, a newer building, Edmonton's kind of had the spotlight with this bubble, and in terms of, Edmonton, a lot of people will knock Edmonton. And I mean, having had to be there recently under some, unplanned circumstances, I was in there briefly. I think it rivals, in terms of a great city. I mean, sure, it may not have the beautiful water and ski, golf, and whatever they say, boat, all within Vancouver, on a spring day. You may not have those options quite the same way in some other cities, such as Edmonton, things like that. But my point is, I think Edmonton, with that brand new building, modern building, I think one of the newest buildings in the NHL now, if not the newest, they could possibly find a way, if they can make it work, to make some things happen. And it'll be interesting to see, because they've got, maybe someone like that. I mean, he was there, he won a cup, him and some other guys that were there in St. Louis, and they, St. Louis has got an interesting, I don't know what they're going to be doing, not to make this about St. Louis, but now they've traded their one of their goalies. I even heard one rumor recently that, and it may have just been somebody wishful thinking, that Seattle is going to somehow try to do like a Marc-Andre Fleury type thing and get, who's the big goalie in St. Louis that Vancouver got in his head? Their starter.
Binnington?
Yeah, Binnington. That Seattle might find a way to try to get him as a building block for their franchise, and it's like, interesting. I don't know if that would happen.
I don't know if that would happen either. There's no other backups there, so.
Well, I don't even know who's in St. Louis as an alternate right now, because they have who's their backup now that they've traded Jake Allen. So
Billy Husso, and that's really it. They don't really got any other backup goalie.
So I think the wishful thinking for Seattle, if that was even anywhere where that started about Binnington, it brings it back to, I don't think St. Louis wants to completely blow up this team. And if you lose your captain, and if he was a big part of trying to think who, Ryan O'Reilly's the other one I'm thinking of that's there, that's was a beast, and then until Vancouver found a way to get to that team. The point is, I think you could see Pietrangelo go to Edmonton, and Colorado seems to get a lot of players, and Colorado's another team that's in a window that I'm sure they were pretty disappointed now that they didn't make it beyond Dallas.
Yeah.
But that's the luck. That's the luck, how it goes. And so they could definitely be a player, but I just have a funny feeling it's going to be Edmonton. They're going to make a splash somehow. You would know better if they can make it work with their salary situation. I don't know. So
it would need a lot of work, and I don't want to overpay Pietrangelo. I think he's worth $7 to $8 million. If he's getting $9 to $10 million, I think the Oilers will walk out of that conversation. But we do need to get rid of Larson and Russell. That's the biggest thing for us. And, of course, getting back our young players to contracts before we even get Pietrangelo. It's going to be pretty difficult to get Pietrangelo on the roster, but it is a possibility if we do make some trades and stuff like that. But it would be pretty damn difficult to pick it up. But any last words before we end the podcast off?
No, I'm sorry that Calvin was his schedule conflicted and unable to be joining us, but I think we covered off sort of the three teams that are sort of the trifecta, ironically, Western Canada teams that we all have an interest in: Calgary, Edmonton, and Vancouver, in no particular order, however you want to mix it up: Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver. But the fact is, I think it's going to be an interesting, to see what happens in this. I think the NHL playoffs, if they run the limit, it looks like Game 7 would be the 30th if it goes that far. We know it's going to be, obviously, it could be 4 games. It could go longer than that. If Tampa can win tomorrow, well, then we know we have at least 5 games in this series. So the fact of the matter, or 6 games, I guess it would be. So the fact of the matter, if I can do my math, I can't even do my math here. I guess 5 games. So the fact of the matter is, I've been up early since this morning, so very early.
No
so
worries.
The fact of the matter is, I think it's going to be interesting off season, and I think all three of the BC Alberta teams have got some interesting stuff going on, and it'll be interesting to see what evolves. I guess free agency doesn't open up until I think it's about 9th of October. I want to say somewhere in there,
somewhere around there. Yeah, somewhere around
so
there.
it'll be interesting times. It'll be interesting if they could get some of this stuff done. Obviously, it doesn't have to wait till then unless these players want to go to the market. But it'd be interesting to see from where my passion is, the Vancouver standpoint. If you could get a Toffoli locked up early, good on them. Then you avoid all that, because a lot of the time once you go to free agency and funny, I'm just going to say this part and then I'll let you wrap up. Toronto wants to be the center of the universe, and I know they've gone a long time, as we covered off last time. I want to say it's over 50 years, as long as Vancouver and Buffalo have been in the league. All those teams, Vancouver, Buffalo, Toronto, have never won a cup from 1970 onwards. So the point is, Toronto tries to do things, but it still goes back to, I think there's just something wrong there with the structure of the leadership. Like, just to say this, they had Lamoriello there, Babcock. Okay, maybe you change Babcock, fine. But now they've got who's the ex-NHL? Shanahan is sort of the super boss. Then you've got, the young guy, whatever his name is, as the GM. I don't see what his real qualifications there were to go from an AHL team or whatever to the NHL. I just think some of his decisions are anchoring this team, and not in a good way, because I've seen it before firsthand, being around junior hockey years ago. You can have a team, in this case it was the Richmond Sockeyes. I know it's not the same as the NHL, but I'm going to say this, it doesn't matter what level you're at. You can have teams of lots of great goal scorers, but if you don't have maybe the grit or that certain intangible experience that you can fit in. And with a cap, it's harder and harder now. They can't just spend money and bring in whoever they want. You don't have the right mixture, and credit to Columbus knocking out Toronto again. I mean, I'm surprised heads haven't rolled in Toronto, because Toronto's had lots of great players and they can't seem to
get it together,
get it done. Other than when the Pat Quinn was there, I think Pat Quinn got them to the Final Four twice, and I mean, that was the closest they got. And Pat Burns against Vancouver and LA in 93 and 94 respectively. But since then, all through the 2000s, I think it's just been one disaster after another. And it seems to be at times, I mean, Burke was there and gone, and then you had Nonis. It just seems to be, there's times that some of the decisions that have been made throughout that organization, it's almost like you would say, for lack of a better term, it's cursed somehow. So
yeah, it is. It seems like it.
Yeah, so that's my last thoughts. I don't know, you can run with whatever else you want to wrap up with.
All right, awesome. Thank you guys very much for listening into the PCM podcast. It was a fun episode. Thank you, Mark, for being here. His links are down in the description below for his Twitter. Also for Kelvin's, all his links are in the description below as well. And same with me. But we're going to end things here. Thank you very much, guys, for watching, or for listening, I guess. We will be doing another episode next week, as well as it should be almost done the Stanley Cup Finals, I think, for when we do our next episode. So that'll be exciting. But we're going to end things here. Thank you guys very much for listening, and I'll see you guys all later. Adios,
See ya.
amigos.
See ya.